Welcome back to Montessori Moments. I'm sorry it has taken so long for me to post this next one. I know we started that study of the brain. I was able to write those parts, but I had not had time to film them with the beginning of the school year and everything going on. So today is part 2 of our look at the brain, where we will discuss how several parts of the brain work together for the very complex action of speech and all those things that go along with it. So speech is not just the act of words coming out of a mouth. First, the ears must hear and send the message to the auditory part of the brain, which is located in the temporal lobe. So if you'll remember, our temporal lobe is here, this large part kind of to the front bottom of the brain. And so then if we look at this diagram, here is the auditory part of the brain. Got a glare there. There we go. So this is where the sound is sent and heard. And then it is sent to the Wernicke's area to make sense of the sound. So you'll notice the Wernicke surrounds the auditory part of the brain. And it also bumps up to the occipital lobe. This is where image recognition is formed, if you'll remember. So the temporal lobe is where our short-term memory is located. And this is vital to remembering and making sense of spoken and written language. So once the brain has processed what is said, it must then formulate an answer and send that back to the vocal cords and the muscles of the mouth. When any of these areas are underdeveloped or has an injury, speech and understanding can be impacted. Once the brain has processed, sorry, guys, I gotta move my notes up. So if a child has an underdevelopment, an injury, or a gene that affects the auditory part of the brain, a child may be deaf or hard of hearing. So great advances have been made to allow some hearing in children who are hard of hearing by use of cochlear implants, hearing aids, or surgeries. There continues to be a large community of people that use American Sign Language, and it has become a lot more common in everyday life for more and more people to use ASL to make it easier for people who are deaf to really communicate. And let me be clear on this too, that having any of these difficulties in hearing does not mean that a person will not live a full and impactful life. So it's also very beneficial to use sign language, and it's become a lot more common to use sign language in early childhood programs. So the muscles in the hands form faster than the muscles in the tongue and mouth. So a lot of times these are used for communication and to alleviate frustration with smaller children. Sometimes the muscles of the mouth, the tongue, or the vocal cords are slow to develop, and this can mean it's hard for children to form words. Licking ice cream or lollipops can help exercise the tongue as well as the mouth and lips, and it will give that workout just like you would your biceps, so that children can learn to form the sounds correctly in their speech. Some children may have difficulty understanding what is being said, and this would be an underdevelopment in the Wernicke's area of the brain. Parents can help a child with understanding by reading and pointing at objects in books or out wherever you go, the zoo, anywhere, and naming lots of things so they're connecting the sight and the sound with these. And then asking children to point to objects and name things, but giving extra time for the child to process. 10 seconds may seem like a very long time to you, but that child's brain is working very hard during this time and needs to be given a chance to process, and then for that answer to come out. Both the receptive and expressive language delays in children should be addressed by a speech pathologist. In all of these areas of the brain, any kind of differences in genetics can cause dyslexia, which in general runs in families. Older generations may be unaware that they had or have it since it was not widely diagnosed until the 1980s. I want to be very clear that dyslexia has nothing to do with intelligence, but it's just a difference in brain structure and processing. The cells in the brain are arranged in columns, so kind of like pillars, and the synapsi in the brain move between these columns. So in an average person, they are about like obviously in micro, but and they're a standard distance apart, whereas in the dyslexic brain, they're further apart. So what happens with those synapsi is in a regular brain, we get this moving directly in between these two. Lots and lots and lots of connections right here, especially in that language area of the brain. But in a dyslexic person, when they're further apart, less connections happen in the columns next to each other, but they spread across the brain. So a dyslexic person's connections from their language area go to all the other areas of the brain a lot more than in other people. And so even though they can struggle with language and they can struggle with reading, they tend to be really fantastic at math, computer sciences, puzzle solving, because they make those different connections than the rest of us. Early intervention is really key to ensuring that children with dyslexia do not fall behind their peers in learning. The Orton-Gillingham method is what is mostly used in dyslexia interventions and what they're based on. So if you're looking for interventions, be sure and ask what type of intervention they used and what it is linked to. If it runs in your family, or you see that your child is struggling with letter or number recognition, word recall, or blending words by the age of 5, it's time to ask for testing. So as you've heard today, the brain is so incredible and develops in so many ways. Using language as much as possible will stimulate your child's brain to make connections and help build memory and processing skills. A running commentary of daily things such as changing diapers or the grocery shopping keeps your child engaged, helps build language, and helps build a bond with you. Using sign language can help your young child connect and communicate very early, helping alleviate frustration. Things like help, milk, please. Singing songs stimulates the brain. Notice how children always remember the words to the songs, but don't remember the things you wanted them to remember. So it also helps build rhythm and helps children just learn in such a fun way. And as always, read. There is no better indicator of early learning than a home where children are read to for at least 30 minutes per day. Next time, we will look at the frontal lobe development and how it affects behavior. See you next time.